You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle Podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of ZESTY Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
Hi everybody, Alex here. I am popping in for a 28-day podcast series. It's all going to come out in a row, and I am so freaking stoked about it. I have been thinking about this content for a while, and now the time has come. It's time for us to do this. So here's how this podcast series is going to work. So for 28 days, which represents 28 days of a, quote unquote average cycle. If you've been listening here for a while, you know the deal with that there's tons of variability and what to do about it. So, we're going to shelve that kind of detail for a while because the 28-day cycle still represents the majority of the experience that people are going to have. So even though Megan and I tend to have 26 days, and we always have since we were kids, we still have the exact same stuff going on. And some people have 30 or whatever, as long as everything's happening well and there's no bothersome symptoms. The variability in terms of the length is okay, and we can still use a 28-day cycle as a proxy for that kind of thing. All right. So even though it's going to be 28 days, it can be completely adapted to your cycle individually. And of course, just as a reminder, if you don't have one, that's where the moon cycle comes in super duper handy, because it is also 28 days and can be followed with an app just like a cycle tracking app would do, and there's no irregularity there, so that's cool. All right, so whatever you got going on, this stuff can be adapted to it. Now, what this podcast series will not include is a recap of the things that are in the pod classes in season 1, where I actually describe what is happening inside the body in great detail. And it will not be including the information from season 5, the advanced pod classes, because again, I've already covered that and there's a ton of detail in there. And rather than rehashing that, I am going to move ahead with more of the actionable steps. So these are going to be short podcast episodes, and the focus will be on actionable items and kind of awareness of what's going on internally and how to interact with that from a daily basis. The other thing that's going to be included in this podcast series is that there's actually a companion guide. Okay, so there's a 28-day companion guide that you'll get it all at once, but you'll essentially follow along with the days. So to get the companion guide to go along with this podcast series, that you can go to, it's also in the show notes, but it's zestyginger.com/flow, FLOW, right? So you can just hop on over there, you put in whichever email you want it to go to, and you'll get an email, and that'll be it. But essentially, and day by day, you can start to go with that. Now, you might be catching this at whenever your cycle is, right? So even though I'm starting day 1 today, you may not be. So the podcast will come out every single day. You can go ahead and listen along because all of it's still going to be relevant. When it comes to the companion guide, what I suggest doing there is, since you're actively in whatever phase of the cycle that you're in, or if you're going by the moon, obviously that's doing its thing, I would do the companion guide on the day that you actually are. And then if it makes sense, once all of the 28 days of this podcast series is out, if you want to circle back around, that's totally fine too. But essentially, when it comes to the companion guide, you can jump right into where you actually are, because it's from that place of what your body and your brain are already doing that those things will make the most sense. All right, so just follow along there. But with the companion guide, you can go ahead and be doing the work as it pertains specifically to you. Alrighty. And actually, I'm going to be doing the same thing. I am doing the companion guide as I do these. And then once everything comes out, I'm going to go circle back around, wherever I am. Even though we do this content and we know it and all of that, in real life, we also still are learning all the time about ourselves, right? It's not that I do a refresher of the cycle. I know that I'm an expert in that, so that's no problem. What I want to continually become more and more of an expert in is myself and my relationship with myself and the way that I function best. So, with things like that, there's kind of no shortage of work to be done because we are always evolving and changing. And quite frankly, a lot of us have been conditioned in a lot of different ways that at some point we have to decide, do we want to keep doing those things? Do we want to keep being those things? And if not, that takes a little bit of work to get going. So, zestyginger.com/flow is the companion guide. And so we're going to dig into day one today. All right, so day one is phase one, and that is when your period starts. So, with that, the brain overall for this phase is really geared towards making sense of our world, which is why, and I've said this before, but that's why a lot of times you'll wake up and you have your period and you're like, wow, gosh, my hair looks like crap today. My face looks like crap today. I messed up that thing at work today. My car needs a car wash. The kids are being really like needy. Everything is just kind of meh. And a lot of times people feel like they take it personally, where in reality, sure, it's totally normal to go through life and notice things that you would want to be different. Like that can happen on any given day, but it's generally because the brain is looking to make sense of things. It's essentially going to run rampant at organizing and judging. I'm not using that word as a negative, but it's literally like making determinations of things. And that is why, left unchecked, then we can really get caught in that loop of like, everything's wrong. I want to change a bunch of stuff. Why am I like this? Blah, 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 blah. Right? So, really, for the day one, it's really helpful to use that. I mean, it's an internal event, but obviously you can see it externally in your body. It's a good time then to use that event to really sit down and assess your inner and outer world. All right, so the brain is geared up for that. There's been people have looked at kind of how the hemispheres, the two halves of the brain, fire in women, and generally speaking, they are quite communicative at this time. And so when it comes to pulling out information that's been stored, putting things together in novel ways, the brain is really geared to do that. And that's why we talk about planning and introspection so much at this time, because it really gives us a really beautiful opportunity to use our brain to its full capacity on our behalf, right? So rather than just letting it run wild and beat yourself up over it, if we kind of flip the script and say, I'm going to utilize the fact that it's doing that, but really sit down and lead the discussion, that's where we can garner so much valuable information about ourselves. And even, if we notice that things are off in some areas, that is still, even if it doesn't feel great in the moment, right, can be really valuable over time. So, in the companion guide, you'll see that the work for today is all about doing that assessment to really look at what is going on under the hood. Like, what's going on with your health? What is your view of your health? And what's your relationship with the world you live in, right? Like, what is actually going on? And really sitting and getting very clear on that, because as we look at those things, then generally speaking, as we ask ourselves the right questions, we start to get answers that we can then do things about. And so, sitting down and utilizing that brain power, really, really helpful. Now, what happens if you're in day one and you're like, yeah, I want to do that, but I'm already kind of ramped up, right? Or it's been a stressful day, or it's been a stressful week or year, whatever you got going on, right? The deal with introspection is that it's best done from a place of quiet. And when it comes to brain physiology, it makes the most sense. It's essentially if you got 10 burners on the stove, right? And there's just a lot to be juggled, there's less opportunity for the brain to go pull out new information. It's already busy doing a lot of things. So, if it doesn't feel like you're in that kind of steady state where you can say, let me evaluate things calmly, which, day one doesn't always happen. Been there, no judgment, it's all good. The invitation then is, before doing this kind of thing where you're doing an assessment of what's going on, to actually get quiet first. So, this can look like meditation, it can look like journaling. My personal favorite at this time is actually getting a little quiet time in nature. Okay, so in nature, it's just such a fabulous source of perspective for us, right? You look around and you're like, wow, the adaptability here, like the way that things, plants grow through the cracks in the sidewalks, the abundance. Like, you look at flowers or you look at leaves on a tree, and there's just no shortage of them. Like, nature just gets after it. No one's sitting around being like, gosh, don't make too many leaves, there might be a shortage of it, right? They just do that. And then authentic beauty is another aspect of that, where you look around, and if we can look at flowers and say they're pretty, and you look closer and some of the leaves are imperfect, it really is such a helpful and beautiful reminder to us to be like, even though today I don't like my hair, or I didn't like how I behaved at work, or fill in the blank for whatever you got going on, it can give us that perspective that says, it's still okay for me to recognize I got a couple leaves that look a little funky, but you zoom out, I'm still beautiful inside and out, right? So that's why this is such a beautiful time to connect with nature, I think, because your brain's already making all of these connections. And so when we put ourselves in an environment that we can learn from, especially a quiet one where we have the opportunity to really reflect, we can start to be just very pleasantly surprised and amazed at how we can internally become our own authority of, it's how I love listening to podcasts and reading books and all that stuff. I will never stop doing those things. But ultimately, the pearls that come to me from that state internally, when I come up with those from my own being, like from my own source, they stick so much more powerfully. And so, this is the time to have that kind of thing. Now, with all of this stuff, imperfect and done, will still get you further down the road than expectation of perfection and then not doing it, right? Because here's the thing with the cycle, whether it's your native one or you're following the moon, there will be another cycle after that, right? And so 5 minutes of silence and 5 minutes of doing the companion guide, if that's what you got, that is amazing, because 5 minutes, 10 minutes times 13 cycles of the year ish adds up to a lot of day ones. There's just a lot of time then to do that kind of thing. And when you're doing that focus work from a place of quiet and really evaluating, and then there's going to be times of the cycle to take action on it and really do that kind of thing, it adds up so profoundly. It's like saving $10 a year or whatever, like people do with money. It really adds up. So this is going to be a common theme throughout this, is that just small tiny things, small opportunities, a little bit of, even if you're just kind of thinking through things in the car, good. We applaud you. Megan and I are super duper proud of you. That's how we do things too, because as you know from hearing us and stuff, we're both super busy and we do a lot of stuff. So half the time, yeah, we don't have this perfect life either, where we're like, oh, I just sit around and journal for an hour a day and then like go on a walk in nature. Like, yes, sometimes, but we just have normal lives just like the rest of you. And so allow yourself the gift of being an action taker without the expectation of perfection that will ultimately sort of just hold you back from experiencing the benefits of what you're doing, and then getting the feedback from that, which is then motivating, which then moves you forward. And so that really is where I want to wrap up this episode. Okay, so today, little assessment, just take a little time. There's the companion guide that will help you along with that. And prior to that, consider sitting quietly, preferably in nature, but don't worry about it if you can't. Sitting quietly for a few minutes, up to whatever you're comfortable with, to really center and ground yourself, and then go do that work. Alrighty, thank you so much for joining me for day one. I'm so excited that you're here. If you could, please help us spread the word on this, right? So I think that if we, not I think, I know, if there were more women who were well versed in their bodies and how to navigate, Megan and I always talk about, we wish we had learned this when we got like the period talk. Like, what if someone had said, hey, when you get your period, like, it's a great time to get a little quiet, right? Like, maybe go sit in your room. Like, here's a beautiful journal. I would have loved that as a kid. Like, I mean, not everyone's going to be into it, but even just learning and being exposed to this stuff early on, or at some point, even if we don't take action on it till later when the time is right, it's such a gift. So if you feel so inclined, please share this podcast series with your friends, and the women in your life that would benefit from it. And we so appreciate it. Alrighty, that's it for today, and I'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting edge information.
If you found these pod classes helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.